Want to become a more skilled and successful fundraiser? Well, of course you do. Now it all starts with shifting your focus. Let me show you how. Hey guys, and welcome to the episode. In today's video, we're talking about a crucial mindset shift that makes a massive difference in your overall success. Now, we all know how many external factors affect us as face-to-face fundraisers, right? There are all sorts of things in our environment, whether it be the weather, the locations, the venues, the people, whatever it might be, that have a massive effect on our fundraising success. And it's really easy to get bogged down with the circumstances. So today we're going to explore how focusing on what you can influence not only drastically improves your enjoyment, your love of what you do, but enables you to develop your skills far more effectively and overall boost your performance massively over the long term. So with that said, let's get into today's episode. So today I want to share with you a model that really got me started thinking about this idea of where I'm spending my time, particularly my focus and where I'm pouring that energy and that effort. It's a model that comes from a book written many years ago called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's written by an author called Steve Covey. Now this book was phenomenal in many ways, but this is one of the things that's really stuck with me all these years that I continue to use as a frame for talking about this idea of where we focus our time and the effects of focusing our time, our efforts, our energy in the wrong place. Just before we get into the model, I'd love to ask you to stay till the end, where I want to give you some really actionable steps you can take to implement this, not just in your fundraising, but hopefully in your life. This model does not just apply to fundraising. This is a model that you can apply to really any space or any aspect of your life. And I believe if you do take this information on board, be honest with yourself, and really hold yourself accountable to taking action, to moving forward, you will be very surprised at just what a difference focusing on the right things can make. So let's get into the model. The model itself is called the circle of concern and influence. It's a really simple, straightforward model that really helps us to identify the things that we can control and the things that we can't. And it might seem really obvious and simple, these two categories of items, but we often get them mixed up, or at least we often spend time focusing on things, putting our energy into things that not only are a waste of time, don't move us forward, but actually pull us backwards. They take us further away from where we really want to go. Now, the model has 2 concentric circles. The first one is called the circle of concern. Now, the circle of concern contains all the things that may have a very real impact on us, but that we can't change, right? These are things outside of our control. We might also call them external factors. So as fundraisers, if we think about the things that impact our fundraising, our success, that we don't control, we're often thinking about things like the weather, the economy, right? How much money people have, maybe the demographic that we're speaking to, maybe it's the location or the site. Now, I said they may have an impact because they don't always have the impact that we think they're going to have. You know, I have done and performed extremely well in really poor weather, and I've also done extremely poorly in really great weather. I think that the impact that these have on our fundraising is often more to do with us than it has to do with the reality of people or our performance potential. So this is the outer circle, the circle of concern. Then on the inside, we have what we call the circle of influence. The circle of influence contains all the things that we either influence or even control. And if we think about fundraising, again, there's lots of different aspects we can look at here. I kind of think of this as the internal aspect. So on one hand, we have what I call your internal state. Now, your internal state contains all the things that are generally within you, right? So this might be your health, your energy levels, your mindset, your attitude, self-talk, all the stuff that's going on inside of you, right? You have a huge amount of influence or even control over these. Then we have all the skill-based things that we have influence over, right? So if we think about the skills that we can develop, these things will lead to some sort of outcome, whether it be now or tomorrow or as we go, right? By developing our skills, by developing our abilities. It could be our particular fundraising skills, negotiating skills, stopping skills. It could be developing knowledge. It could be our ability to tell stories really well, to ask really effectively. I mean, you can go on and on and on. There are so many different aspects that we could develop in terms of our skills and abilities that will actually move us forward. So the idea behind this model is not simply just to identify these external and internal factors, or the things that we can't control and the things we can control, is really to understand as well the impact of focusing in the wrong area. So when we focus on things in our circle of concern, the things that we don't control, what ends up happening is our influence shrinks. We feel less powerful, less capable, right? We're so concerned with these things that are going on around us that we don't control, that it makes us feel powerless. We might lose motivation, we might feel hopeless. Ultimately, I think what these things do is they create a victim mindset that says, we can't be successful because of X, Y, and Z. Now, again, I have a lot of empathy. I still, and we all will, still continue to struggle with these external factors. It's not to say that we should never think about them or they should never come into our minds, but it's really more about where we are dwelling with our time and our energy and our efforts. Do we see these obstacles as insurmountable, as things we can't get over, or at least that hold us back? We could not be successful because of X, Y, Z. And when we ruminate and focus our energy and our attention on these things, this is when they have a massive negative impact. The biggest impact I think they can have as well is that they stop us from taking the actions that we really should be taking to move forward. So on the other hand, if we look at the circle of influence and what's contained there, right? The circle of influence, when we focus on it, we become more powerful. We gain a much greater sense of our personal power. We see how the things that we do, the things that we focus on, the steps we take, our process in our fundraising, how developing our skills and abilities, how these things ultimately lead to success. These are the indicators of the direction that we're going in. Ultimately, these focuses develop a growth mindset, one that we are in control of our future, we are in control of our success, we can develop and become better and better at what we do. Now again, I'm not saying at all that the things in our circle of concern don't matter and are not going to have an impact, but this is really more the realization that while these things may have an impact, focusing our attention, our energy, and our effort on them are a complete and utter waste of time. In fact, it's even worse than that. By focusing on these things, we're going to be robbing ourselves of power, of energy, of the ability to actually take matters into our own hands, to take the steps that we can take. And ultimately, if we're looking at, can you be successful each and every day? Now, certainly I'm not going to say that you can always get 10 signups a day, or even 5 signups a day, or even 3 signups a day, or whatever it is. I'm not necessarily saying that you can always achieve this if you focus on your influence. Sometimes that isn't the way that the cookie crumbles. But what I am saying is, if your idea of success is not just based on outcomes, but is based on your efforts, on your skill development, of your progression, then I think absolutely you can be successful every day. If you focus on your skill development, for instance, and you work and you use each and every day as an opportunity to grow, to learn, and become a better fundraiser, a more resilient person, you absolutely can be successful every day. And there's one of my favorite quotes at the moment, well, for the last year or so, and it goes, "Calm seas don't make good sailors." And ultimately, it is those challenging days that we have. Those are the ones that really allow us to develop skills and abilities. And I'm convinced that if we use every opportunity, good or bad, to develop ourselves, our abilities, that over time we will be successful. Because, ultimately as a fundraiser, as you know, it's all about consistency. Really includes this idea that we know we're not necessarily going to do amazingly each and every day, but if we are consistent in our approach, then we will see success over time. So if you can use the hard days, the challenging days when your odds are all against you to develop and learn That will mean that you're far better prepared for when the stars do align, when the situations and the environment is in alignment with what you really want. Then that means you can overperform on these days, and ultimately this is what leads to consistent, effective fundraisers, ones that use each opportunity to do their very best. I've had many days where I focus on the things I can influence that I don't do incredibly well, but I feel great even on those days because I know I've not absolved myself of the responsibility to do what I can, and ultimately I become a better person for it. So what can you do with this newfound knowledge, or perhaps remembered knowledge? Perhaps this is something you already knew and perhaps lost sight of. One of the first things that I recommend to people is actually to write out a list. You can write out all the things that have an impact on you that you don't control, right? All the things that are in your circle of concern, and then write another list of things that you influence or control. Now, one of the first things you might notice doing this exercise is, one, it's really easy to come up with the things in your circle of concern. Those things are actually really easy. They're often quite top of mind because they're frustrating, they're irritants, they're things that are kind of generally bugging us. And when you write out the things you can control or influence, you might find this a little bit more challenging. There are actually far more things within your control and influence than the things that aren't, but you might have to just do a bit more deep diving and searching. So I encourage you to really think about this. Think about the internal stuff when it comes to perhaps your health and energy, your mindset, your attitude, your beliefs, your focus. Think about things that are within your skill. Break your fundraising skills down. There's communication skills, there's knowledge, there's a whole lot of stuff that you can focus on here. And when you have these lists created, try and remind yourself that the things outside of your control are quite literally a waste of time. Not only a waste of time, worse than that, they're going to be a drain on your energy and your personal power. So really try and get in the habit of moving yourself across to focus on your influences. And this isn't to say that you will be perfect in this. No one is. I've known this model for 15 years. I still find myself focusing on things that are out of my control. But as I practice refocusing on what is in my control and what I can do, the time between, realizing that I'm wasting my time or that I'm focusing on something very unproductive, the time between noticing that and actually shifting, or noticing that and going, okay, what can I do because of this, has shortened dramatically, and it doesn't take me very long at all to shift focus. So very helpful exercise. The second thing that I would recommend is to focus on your process. It's great to have an outcome. It's great to know what you want to go for in the day, how many signups you want to get in the day or the week or whatever. But have a really strong focus on your process. Understand how you're going to get there. What individual actions, what behaviors, what skills are you going to focus on developing in order to get the result that you want? Maybe it's your storytelling. You really want to focus on vocal variety when you're giving your pitch. Whatever it might be, focus on some individual actions and behaviors. Choose maybe one or two. You don't need a whole set of things to focus on. And just really, be focused on developing that particular skill. Yes, do everything else and try and hit your outcome, but really focus on developing in a certain area. Or perhaps it's overcoming a certain situation. Right? And if you focus your attention, your energy on developing a particular skill like this, you will see that skill improve, and over time, that will just develop and develop further. Ultimately, this is what makes a great fundraiser, one that develops their skills. If you haven't already seen it, I've got a video that I created on the ODP framework. It's a framework that my partner and I have developed specifically for focusing on these types of goals, on outcomes, but also on process. So if you haven't already, check that video out. So that's it for this episode. I'd encourage you to share this with somebody who needs to hear it, with a fundraising friend, with your colleagues, with your team perhaps. I would love your support. I would love to hear you in the comments below. And until the next one, stay inspired and keep fundraising.